So you're going to be prepared for TP4 next week. What is the focus of the lessons in TP4? Alitzel, do you know?
In my case, it is speaking.
Okay, and so that's a productive skill, right? What is the other productive skill, Melissa?
Writing.
Writing, yes. So Alitzel's doing speaking, Melissa's doing writing, and Angel at the end is doing speaking, right?
Yeah.
So just to check, this is the framework. Okay, so there's usually a lead in, whether it's writing or speaking, but the framework's similar for the both of them. You've got exposure, in which you use a model text or dialogue to give an example of the sort of skill that they'll need to be developing or producing at the end of the lesson. Then there's a focus on the useful language found in the text or dialogue. We have a productive task, usually 10 to 15 minutes of extended speaking. And then there is feedback on both the content and language. Yeah. So in Alitzel's case, it's page 12 to 13 of new cutting edge. Note, new cutting edge pre-intermediate. Okay, so it's basically this, where it says compile a fact file. Yeah, so you can more or less use the material as it is. Perhaps begin with a picture of Orlando Bloom. What do they know about him? You know, he was that famous elf. And he was a pirate also.
So, for example, if in my case it is speaking, it is supposed to show writing.
Well, when you say writing, that making a list is technically writing, but that's not the outcome of the lesson. The outcome is to talk about, it's to ask and answer questions to complete a fact file. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So the writing is there, but the main thing is speaking, because they're going to be exchanging information.
Yeah.
Huh?
So, teacher,
Working
can I show
in pairs
you
to ask questions, yeah?
Okay. I wasn't sure about it because I've done only just an advance, but can I show you my power presentation?
Sure.
To tell me if I am right or I had to do some changes.
Go ahead.
This is for the speaking practice. Well, the speaking lesson. My leading, it is watch a video that lasts like a minute. It is very short. And it is, well, the unit, my information from those pages, 12, 13, talks about hobbies and leisure activities. So that's why I
but that's not the same as a fact file, is it? Yeah.
The fact file,
Because it's all about exchanging personal information.
Yeah, asking and giving information.
Yeah. But hobbies and interests is only part of that.
Yeah.
If you look at the fact file, it's more than just, yeah, this is more like it. Yeah. But I would please try and follow the material rather than constantly inventing your new stuff.
For example, in the leading, it is okay to include the hobbies, or
No,
only...
I would seriously begin with Orlando Bloom, as it
Okay.
suggests. Yeah, because then you can use his fact file as your like the model, right? The sort of information that they need to include in their own fact files.
Okay, so it is better if I include a fact file
Yeah.
as a leading.
Yeah, I mean, you can use someone else's fact file. It doesn't have to be Orlando Bloom, okay? It can be someone more Mexican, you know?
Okay.
Like, who's that? Mexican guy that's in Star Wars, Diego
Luna?
Luna, someone like that. Yeah.
Okay,
No?
thank you. So I will skip this part, this video,
Yeah.
and this activity.
Skip the video. Yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah.
to introduce the fact file. Then
Yes, then you need that useful language that's actually in the course book material.
yeah, the useful language is asking and giving personal information. So from the page, I wrote these questions about, yeah, useful questions and the answers.
Yeah.
And
I mean, you could even leave some of that, have gaps in some of the in these questions and get them to complete the gaps. Like, how do you do? What do you do? Like miss out one of the do's and with a gap, and they've got to complete it themselves. Just to give them a little bit of practice in forming the questions before they ask them.
Okay, so
you can also drill the questions. Yeah. How old are you? What do you do? What are your hobbies? You know, which are the stressed words? Get them to repeat before they start asking the questions. That way you can help build their confidence a bit. Yeah.
So, for example, I ask these questions to students to engage them and also make a pronunciation activity like pointing out the stress and getting
that sort of thing. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but very quickly. Yeah, it's not a grammar lesson.
Yeah.
It's just really to get them warmed up for the speech.
Okay. So this is the leading. This
Yeah.
is the previous vocabulary.
Yeah.
This is the example. I thought that it is asking and giving information. So I include an interview because in that interview, I will request from students to take notes of questions about personal information, like what's your name, where are you from, what do you do? So they can see how to use them, this useful question in real life. And
it's time consuming though. You've only got 40 minutes. So I would follow it more closely the course book, because the course book doesn't actually involve watching a video or listening to anything. Right?
But I remember.
I mean, do the questions exactly the same as the ones that they'll need for the fact to complete the fact file?
Only in the interview cover those questions.
Okay, well, it's a limited use then. Yeah.
But for example, if they don't watch or listen something, why
don't you record yourself doing this with a friend? Record it and get them to listen to that. Exactly the questions that they're going to need to complete the fact file.
Okay.
Yeah. So you need to script it and just record it with your telephone. It can be a listening.
And the presentation of that, I did this activity to students speak,
Yeah.
each turn to speak, and they've already know which are the useful questions.
Yeah.
And to finish lesson, I will share this link in Google Drive.
Yeah,
to
but write a little conversation? No, no, because it's fluency practice. It's not writing. What you need to do is give them feedback, right? So you could get them to report at the end after their interview. Look at the course book material. Can you stop sharing for a second?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also I have to share a teacher that in our, how can I say that? In our demo lesson with our teacher Tanya. Also, I took my notes, and I think it's very important to follow that part. And she said something like, after the speaking practice, it is a good idea to continue with other skills. Like in my case, it is
Yeah,
speaking.
but you've only got 40 minutes. Okay, so if you follow, what you should do really is follow the framework. Okay, the recommended framework is the following. All right, so you've got a lead in, exposure, useful language, productive task, and then feedback. Content would be to tell the class 2 things about what you discovered about your partner, as it says in the materials. So look in the coursebook materials that are recommended. Yeah, tell the class 2 things you discovered about your partner. Right, that is the feedback on the content. Now, feedback on the language, you can give them some feedback on this. How well did they use these questions? How well did they use the useful language? That requires you to listen while they're interviewing. Yeah. If you're worried that the lesson is going to finish early, well, you can just change the partners so that they work again with a different partner in the breakout rooms. And that will also give you the opportunity to listen and get more samples for your feedback.
Oh, okay. So just to summarize,
Uh-huh.
there is not leading because I will introduce my model.
Well, your lead in will be to talk about the person in the fact file, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you could change Orlando Bloom for Diego Luna, for example, right? Okay, so what do you know about? Tell me what you know about Diego Luna. Uh-huh. So you're trying to elicit some of these ideas. Is he married? Where was he born? You know,
Okay.
so that's a way of brainstorming some of these questions. Hmm?
So then I introduce the fact file as it is.
Yeah, at the beginning of the lesson.
Yeah, and then the activity to talk about with, I don't know, after the fact file, I introduce the useful question asking and giving personal information.
Yeah.
And there are those that you highlighted, but I wasn't very sure because these questions are, I don't know if my students that are beginners understand them.
Well, you could just, well, you can differentiate a bit, right? Some of them will be able to ask some of the questions. Some of the more advanced ones can ask some of the more advanced questions.
So have I don't know if I have to include all of them or only.
Well, I would include all of these facts in the fact file and as many as you can of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's enough.
Okay.
7 or 8 questions so that they can fill the fact file in themselves.
So then next activity, a speaking activity.
Uh-huh.
And then the feedback.
And then the feedback.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Melissa, you're writing a postcard.
Yes.
And you've got to find a postcard, right?
Yeah.
So I managed to find a postcard activity for you, so you can might be able
thank you.
to adapt this.
Okay. Thank you very much.
It's a postcard from New York. You could simplify it if you wish. You don't have to.
Yeah.
I wouldn't try to teach all this because it's for a longer lesson, I think, this one.
All right.
But at least you've got a model here that you could use in your lesson.
All right. Yeah. Thank you. And for the lead-in, I have a video of 2 minutes, for 2 minutes, of Mr. Bean trying to send a postcard.
No.
So
No, don't wait. Reduce your lead in.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's stop using videos unless we have a very good reason for using them. Okay. So maybe if your postcard, your model postcard is about New York, then the lead in could be about New York, right? With a picture of New York and yeah. And then so then you can brainstorm with the class. Okay, what can you see in New York? Right? Everyone knows the Statue of Liberty, right? So maybe you could have some pictures on a Jamboard, and maybe you can get the students to match the places mentioned, like Central Park, Brooklyn Bridge, Statue of Liberty, right?
Okay.
Then you show them the text, which is the postcard, and maybe ask 1 or 2 gist questions, checking their understanding, right? And this is quite good. Things Amy has done, things Amy is going to do. So you say something like, okay, Amy is in New York. Okay, now what is she already done and what is she going to do in the future? Right. So you read the postcard and you put them in the right places.
All right.
Yeah. And then you can draw their attention to some of the expressions in the text.
Okay.
Like what goes in the first paragraph is like an update, isn't it? Right. The second paragraph is like what the weather is like, and there's expressions like "wish you were here." Good way to finish a postcard. Finishing the postcard.
Okay. Also, I think I have to show them the elements of a postcard, like with examples.
Yeah.
Okay.
But don't do really obvious stuff like the address, because it's obvious that's the address, right?
Okay.
What they're interested, what you need to do is get them to write the body of the postcard, right? But they're not interested in the stamp either, really. It's not that useful. Yeah.
Okay.
But all of this stuff from Dear Mum and Dad down to Love Amy, that would be useful to teach them, right?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Here we don't have to use the form, right? For this type of writing.
What type of form?
Like the form of the verb and the structure. No, right?
You can point out that it's
present, because
well, it's the present continuous, isn't it?
Okay. Yeah.
And maybe you could just point out going to, but I wouldn't bother with present perfect because they're elementary level, right? So, yeah. I mean, yeah. So don't bother with present perfect, but the continuous is kind of useful. because it shows that what they're doing right now. Yeah. Simplify it. You've only got 40 minutes, right? So then you could use Google Slides to get them to do the writing itself. So you can give each student a slide. Let me just show you what on an elementary writing lesson looks like with using Google Slides. Okay. Elementary writing. Here we go. Okay, so this was writing like a personal profile. And I got the students to write on a Google Slides. Okay. I gave each student a Google slide. Okay. So what they had to do was write 3 to 4 paragraphs about themselves for netfriends.com to try to convince readers to write to you. These were elementary learners, right? And so each student got a slide. They were given like 15 minutes to write. And some did very well. Some only wrote like 4 sentences. But others, you can see, they wrote quite a lot. Right? When they'd finished writing, I put them in pairs in breakout rooms, and they had to read each other's, put ticks. Did your partner's post contain personal information, reason for writing, things she does in her free time, things she does well, things she loves or hates, and contact details? Huh? The advantage is that we can, doing this, you can see what the student's writing. Easy to monitor them, yeah? That's Google Slides. And you share the link in the chat, and they all write in that. Make sense?
Yeah, a lot. Thank you very much. And should I include pronunciation?
No.
No? Okay.
Not necessary. You've got to be focused on what's important. Getting them to write a recognizable postcard is the main thing. Yeah?
All right. Yeah. Thank you very much, Andrew. It's very helpful.
And Angel, you're doing page 48, new cutting edge, describing people. It's a bit like that game, Adivina Quién. Have you ever played that?
Yes, I have.
Yeah.
I was thinking and use something similar like the book, but with maybe some famous film about Catch Me If You Can. Maybe give the same direction as like in the book.
Yeah, I would try to adapt and use the material in the book as much as possible.
Yes, and maybe for the living, well, I was looking for a picture where is the
well, couldn't you just use the maybe the situation of what's happening in the it's a crime scene, right? So that try and establish the situation that you need to describe. You were a witness, and you need to describe to the police officer. So some people are police officers and some people are the witnesses.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I think it's necessary to pre-teach some vocabulary, right?
A little, but don't overdo it. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's preparation exercise. There's a bit on the preparation there. At page 140, 142. Turn to page 140 to see a picture of the man. So that's the man. And the other person has to ask questions to find out which one of these. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And your useful language is there for you on page 48. So you need to spend a little bit of time on that useful language so that they can ask and guess who is the person. But remember, it's not a grammar lesson, so you don't want to spend too much time on the grammar. Yeah. It's like, treat them like it's vocabulary. .48. Well, here on 49, right? That's the useful language.
How to spread this aspect.
Sorry, maybe you could get them to categorize them according to its functional language to describe the suspect or to ask about the suspect.
Yeah.
Huh?
Okay, yeah.
Quite fun to prepare. I think you'll enjoy it.
Thank you.
Any further questions?
Also, I was thinking and use some information about from Harmer, sorry, from Jeremy Harmer, how to teach speaking. Follow some rules from there.
Well, it doesn't harm to reread those tips. Yeah, it's always useful.
Thank you.
But in fact, let's have a quick review of speaking skills lesson, how to plan a speaking skills lesson. So let's quickly go through this. Should only take about half an hour. See if I can speed through it. Right, so question, what's the difference between students speaking in a lesson and speaking outside a lesson? Any ideas?
Maybe in a lesson is formal and outside our lesson is more informal.
Well, formal, yes, in the sense that we need to provide a structure.
Okay.
So the students can do speaking task well, and we need to give them good feedback on the language through error correction. So just letting them talk about something and they leave the lesson, how can you prove that they're any better at the skill of speaking than when they came into the lesson? Yeah? But fortunately, you don't have to make it up. I'm going to give you a structure you can apply to whatever speaking lesson. So, in a speaking skills lesson, do or don't. Start with a lead in to get students interested in the topic. What do you think? Do or don't? Put your answer in the chat. Do, yes. Most people would agree, right? Yeah. Start with the lead in. It's a chance to connect to the topic of the lesson with their own experience, helps them get interested, raise awareness of what you're going to talk about. It shouldn't be focused on new vocabulary and grammar, just a fun, maybe 3 or 5 minute intro to your lesson. So, for example, we might want them to plan a party together. That's the task later in the lesson. So the lead-in might be, what was the last great party you went to? Talk to your partner for 2 minutes. Yeah, so although the students are talking to each other in the lead-in, it's not the speaking task. It's just providing a context for the lesson. Yeah? So then we set the task. This is establishing a communicative goal the students are going to try to accomplish. So they have to plan a party for the last day of class. They'll have to agree on the venue, the budget, that's a limit on how much they can spend, what the food and drinks will be, what kind of music and entertainment will be provided. So that's authentic and motivating. And the reason it works as a speaking task is that there's a communicative goal that the students are trying to accomplish. And that's separate from use this language because I told you so. So what about this one? In a speaking lesson, do or don't. Provide a model or example of the speaking task. That is, give a demonstration. What do you think? Do or don't? Yeah, most people would say do, right? Yeah. Yeah, so demonstrate the task. There's a big difference between telling them what they're going to do and showing them. Make the demonstration as authentic as possible. If the task is 2 people speaking together and trying to agree on something, you'd better give them a demonstration of 2 people speaking. In this case, you won't be able to do this yourself. In order for this to be really authentic, it might take some more foresight and planning on your part. You could even record you and another person having agreements and disagreements, negotiating how you're going to spend this hypothetical money. If it's a speaking task where people are going to do a demonstration for a new product, then that's a demo you could do alone. Make sure the demo is the same format as the task. Now, what about this one? In a speaking lesson, do or don't. Teach grammar and vocabulary they'll need for the task. Do or don't. Most people say do. That's interesting. The answer is don't. After we set up the task and give a good demo, and before we get into the speaking task, we should take some time to give students some useful language. This is challenging. We said at the beginning, this is not a language lesson. We're not aiming to teach them new grammar and vocab. But for a speaking lesson, to give students a sense that they leave the class having learned something new, it's important to give some phrases or expressions. So we've talked about this negotiating and planning a partner with your partner. What you might bring, how much you're going to spend on decorations. As a teacher, ask yourself, what useful language do students need to know in order to be successful during the speaking task? Hopefully, you've already used it in your demo yourself. If I imagine that I'm planning a party with my wife and I say, I think it's a good idea that we have tequila, but my wife might say, I like champagne, but don't you think soda would be better? So in the process of demoing the task, we also show the students possibly the language they could use in order to do the task successfully. The useful language stage is just a chance for us to focus on that for a little while, and we're not going to turn it into a grammar lesson or a vocabulary lesson. We're not going to hit them on the head with language, right? So give them some sentence starters. Now, we can give them some functional language. You've heard that expression before. Everyday language, sentence starters, make suggestions, negotiate their point in party planning. It's tempting to give them a lot of vocabulary, like vol au vent, balloons, and appetizers. But a lot of that will probably come from the material itself. So it's more useful to think about what they need to do, think about the communicative goal, negotiate and plan this thing together. They need phrases for agreeing and disagreeing and asking people's opinions, for hedging a bit. Well, I like that, but I'd rather have this. It's not individual words or grammar, but phrases you can use anytime you need to agree or disagree. And you just slot in your own language. This goes back to why having a communicative task is so important, because it creates a need for this language. In a speaking lesson, do or don't. Give students some preparation or brainstorming time before letting them start the speaking task. What do you think? Do or don't? Some people say do, some people don't say don't. That's interesting. The answer is do. We set the task, we've demonstrated the task, we've given them some useful language that will enable them to do the task better. Now we're getting to the point where students are going to do the task themselves. But before allowing them to jump in, it's useful to give them some preparation time or brainstorming time. Doesn't have to be extensive if there is a communicative goal, as with this party planning task. Students need to agree on what kind of party they want. It helps if they have their own opinion on the party they want, because that's going to give them something to argue for. Give them time to look through different venues and options. Think about what they want and how they might express those preferences with the useful language you've given them. Give them some minutes, let them think through it, and then they're going to be ready to do the task. Give them support to do the task so it's achievable. Then you assign pairs or groups in advance and give a signal to begin. So make sure you've assigned the pairs or groups in advance. Don't waste time by telling students, choose your own group. So pair students in the class with other ones. It could be strong with strong students, or a weaker student with a weaker student. Yeah. Now, what about this one? During the speaking task, do or don't. Monitor the students, walk around the classroom, checking they're doing the task. What do you think? Do or don't? Is it important to monitor the students? Interesting. Melly says don't monitor the students. Monitor just really means watching, doesn't it? Yeah, you think that watching the students while they're doing the speaking is not a good idea?
I think you can hear them.
Okay, but
Sorry.
well, isn't that what monitoring is about? You watch and you listen to what they're saying. Okay, well, so hopefully the answer is do. Hopefully, if we've done all these structured stages, they won't need us for the speaking task. That's a good thing. So what do you do during the speaking? Well, monitor, walk around the classroom, or if you're online, you go into the breakout rooms and listen, right? Check they're on task. If they have a query about vocabulary, be on hand to help them, but don't get drawn into the conversation. Some students are overly dependent on the teacher, so be a bit aloof, stand off, spread your attention evenly. Yeah. Now, what about this one? In a speaking skills lesson, do or don't, correct learners' errors on the spot, that is immediately. Do or don't. Okay, people are saying don't, that's good. That's the right answer. Yeah, be listening for any errors that are popping up, but don't interrupt the conversation. Take notes at a distance. Don't correct errors on the spot, rather write them down and save them for later in the lesson. The reason we do this is that the aim of the speaking stage is speaking fluency. And in setting up a task to practice fluency, that means we want them to be able to speak without restrictions, without interruption. So error correction is a very good thing, but it can interrupt fluency. Students get so concerned about the errors that they're making that they forget the thing they're talking about. Listen for errors, write them down, don't correct on the spot. It's tempting once the students have finished speaking to go into the error correction, but you want them to tell someone what they've decided. So that's content feedback, the chance to report back on what they've decided. The communicative goal and feedback go hand in hand. There's an opportunity to share the party that they've planned. Let's choose which party we'd like to do all together, so you can have a vote on which is the best party. After you've done that, you can do error correction. In the last 2 minutes of speaking task, you can be writing errors on the board, but ignore them until you're ready for them. If you have an engaging communicative task, students won't notice until you draw attention to the errors on the board. So you've written the sentences you've heard on the whiteboard, and then you can elicit corrections from the students. If you have time, let the students talk about them in pairs or groups. One of them is correct, 4 of them have a mistake. With your partner, find and correct the mistake. If you're pushed for time, you can skip that part and just go through them one by one. What's the mistake? How do we fix it? Good thing about delayed correction is that it allows you to focus on accuracy without interrupting the fluency part of the speaking task. So here are some quick tips. Basically follows the framework I showed you earlier. Any questions?
Yeah, you were sharing the steps for the productive speaking and writing framework. Can you share it again, please? I only got to take note to productive task.
Okay.
Thank you.
There you go. All right, so that's speaking for Alitzel and Ankel principally. I guess we ought to cover writing as well briefly, yeah? It's a similar presentation I have here. Like lots of do's and don'ts. Just get it open. All right. Here we go. Okay, so questions, lots of questions. First question. What's the main aim of a writing skills lesson? Any ideas? You can put your answers in the chat. Is it just practicing grammar and vocabulary? A writing lesson? No.
It's to share information, but with currents.
Well, in a way it is, isn't it? Communicate correctly ideas through writing. Yeah. So, but how do we get the students to do this better? Yeah. So to do so, we need to develop the skill, and writing skill comprises several sub-skills. Some related to accuracy, like editing for spelling, punctuation, and proofreading. Others are related to how we organize and review ideas and how these are expressed in an appropriate style. Question. Does any writing in a lesson develop students' writing skills? Yes or no?
Yes, it always does, I think.
Ah. You may be surprised by the answer. No, it doesn't. Doesn't automatically. We need to upgrade their ability, and that means instructing them in sub-skills of writing. Okay. A writing lesson, do or don't. Only give writing tasks as homework instead of doing writing practice in class. Do or don't. Right. That's good. Good right answers. don't, because you can give writing practice as homework, but don't only do that, because we do need to develop writing sub-skills in the class. They need explicit teaching, right? They don't learn them automatically. They don't always carry these skills over from their first language, Spanish, right? Because some of the skills are not very well developed in their Spanish lessons, right? And some of them are culturally different. The way we write in English is not the same as the way we write in Spanish. Do or don't provide a model or example of the writing task? What do you think? Most people say do. That's correct. Yeah, we do. It's important, as it is with speaking. Yeah. It needs to be similar to the one we want them to write. Do or don't guide students through a writing process so that there could be brainstorming, editing, redrafting, and so on. Is that worth doing? Yeah. Alitzel says do. Michael says do. That's correct. It's a good idea. All right, how about this one? Expect students to produce a piece of writing without any errors. Yeah, don't. Yeah, it's probably not realistic, is it? Nor even desirable, because there's more to writing than just error-free, grammatically correct sentences. Yeah. So don't expect them to do that. Do or don't require students to use specific grammar or vocabulary in the writing task. Oh, my people are saying do. You may be surprised. It's a bit like for the speaking. The answer is don't. The students might find it helpful, but they shouldn't have to, right? Because there are different ways that they can realize the writing task successfully.
Teacher.
Yeah, because we're interested in communication. Right. Go ahead. Question.
Okay. Yeah. For example, I was thinking about if students will be writing a letter. For example, you have to be specific if it is for your boss or for your friend. And that's why I think it requires a specific grammar. Also, the specific topic. For example, inviting somebody to a party, or just maybe a letter to enter a university.
Okay, but there are various ways that the communication can be achieved, and you can't always specify in terms of grammar. Well, there are other factors as well that make communication successful.
Okay. So without specifications.
Okay, but there's the next question. Can we provide suggestions of words or phrases students could use in the task? Do or don't? Yes, this is it. Yeah. Because, correct, it's do. We can Provide vocabulary or phrases that might be useful for them, offering them as tools in their communication. How about this? Give students time to edit each other's work. Most people would agree with that one, right? Do. Yes, it's a nice idea. Sometimes students say this is too difficult if students are all at the same level, but each student will have different strengths. So peer feedback is good because it's interactive and it gives them a chance to receive feedback on their writing, and it helps them to develop the skill of proofreading. What about this one? Have students read their writing out loud in voz alta at the end of the lesson. Elitzel says don't. Why not?
To give them confidence.
So you think it's good for them to read their writing out loud at the end of the lesson?
Yeah, only write, but don't read aloud it. Because maybe they don't feel sure, and if you expose them, and maybe for the next time they won't.
Right, that makes sense. Yeah, because students might not be comfortable. Also, if you've got a lot of students in your class, like 10 students, you're not going to have time for every student to read out their piece of work, right? So you've got to think about the timing. It's not the best way to spend the time. And when the student is reading out the piece of writing, only that one student is doing anything. The other students are not necessarily listening. The student is just focusing on pronunciation. It's not a writing skill. All right. Think about what you would expect to do with the writing. It's not a poem or a speech. Yeah. If it was a poem or a speech, it might make sense for them to read it aloud, but otherwise, no. Okay. So just a few points. Key concepts in writing. All text types are written, number one, to communicate a particular message. And number two, to communicate it to somebody. What we write and how we write depends on who will read our message. There are two basic approaches for teaching writing, yeah? Product and process. I'm sure Vicky and Tanya have touched on this already in a previous session, but I'll just review the product approach because this is the one you'll use, Melissa, when you're writing your postcard. All right. So here's an example text. What does the writer want the reader to do and why? Can anyone tell me? Write your answer in the chat. You've got 90 seconds to read it and write your answer in the chat. So Melly says, make a change. Yes, change the room, basically. Yeah, he wants to change rooms in his halls of residence at college, where he's staying. Why? Well, his roommate plays loud music and has friends around for all-night parties. Ah, so what might we do next in this lesson? Well, we can have the students label parts of the text to make them aware of the content and layout. This is a longer lesson, so there's more of these parts of the text. With your lessons, I suggest that you keep them down to maybe 4 or 5 is enough elements. So let me just show you the Jamboard. You can have a go at moving the pieces of the letter. The students can move these. Reason for writing to ask. So that would be number 5, right? Request for action will be 8. Letter ending 10. Date, letter opening. So Jamboard's quite useful for showing them the parts of the text. Yeah. After we've checked the answers, maybe we can then highlight the parts of the letter that are particularly important, that they have to get right, like the request for action, reason for writing, description of situation. Right, the others are maybe less important for persuading the reader to do something. That's what basically what we want to achieve with this letter. Do you think it's going to be a successful letter? Do you think it's sufficiently formal and polite?
Yeah.
Would you be
very formal?
Would you be offended if you received this letter?
No.
No. Okay, yeah. So they need to persuade the writer, don't we? So part of what makes it successful is what we call the register or appropriacy. Right. So then, as with the students, then we could perhaps focus a little bit on this. So here's a little questionnaire that you could get the students to answer. So which of these 3 letter openings is formal? Which of these 3 reasons for writing is formal? Which of these 3 requests for action is more informal in style than the others? Which is more informal than the others? So make a decision, press submit, and we'll check our answers. Oh, you have to submit your email, sorry. Let's just go through it quickly together then. Sir or madam, you would agree that? Okay, I'll just go through the answers. So dear sir or madam, formal. The third one here, right, is the formal one. Because that includes contractions and that's too direct. Will you give me is more informal, it's too direct.
I'm seeing the Jamboard, or are we working with forms?
No, we've moved on to the register, yeah?
Oh, okay, thank you.
So which of these letter endings is more informal in style than the others is regards, right? Because that's found in emails and the others more in letters, formal letters. Yeah, because so this area of appropriacy is very important for speaking and writing, and speaking in particular. Yeah. And next stage would be to get them to write, but with a clear rubric and template. So rubric is the instructions. And there's a template and they've got to write on there. And that was similar to the one I showed you earlier from my elementary writing lesson, where we've got a clear instructions and there's something to write on. Right? It's not a good idea to get them to write in their notebooks because then you can't see what they're writing on. Yeah, they could be writing anything. And it's difficult to get feedback because then you have to say, okay, hold up your notebook. So there's, yeah, difficult to give feedback on that. Rubric is the instructions. Yeah. So bear those ideas in mind. Oops. Sorry. Where's the... There we go. Back to it. Okay, and then have the students evaluate the letters using a checklist. Obviously, with elementary level, should be simpler than this. This is more like upper intermediate. Yeah, this formal letter. So keep it simple. So the questions are simpler. For my elementary level lesson, it was just personal information, reason for writing, things they do at weekends, things he likes, loves, hates, contact details. So the students need to be able to read the other student's letter and fill those in. Use the ticks. Something simple. Yeah. And they won't be used to doing this, so you need to sort of train them a little bit. So the easier, the simpler it is, the better. Okay, so for writing lesson, there's usually a lead-in with a comprehension check. There's analysis of layout or the content. We can make them aware of the register, style and appropriacy. And get them to write according to the task rubric. Template is useful. Get them to evaluate each other's writing using a checklist. If there's time, you could get them to rewrite, but in 40 minutes, there's not going to be time for that. And optional could be a display. Get them to, if you're in a real life classroom, put them on the wall. Yeah. All right, so that's writing. Any questions? Does it make sense?
Yeah, I don't have any questions now. I hope I don't get them when I'm working on them.
Well, you could always ask Vicky or Tanya, who's going to observe your lesson, whoever it is. Have any doubts before the lesson?
Teacher, I have a question about my lesson number 4.
Yeah.
I will introduce the fact file, but it is a writing, so it is a good idea to
No, it's a speaking.
Read the fact.
It's a speaking lesson.
Yeah. So can I tell them to speak, to read the fact file?
Well, what you can do is perhaps follow the material. I mean, it says you get them to brainstorm some questions, right, that are going to go into the fact file. So let's have a look at it again. And it says page 12, doesn't it? Yeah. Let's go back to page 12. There it is. I'll put it on the screen.
In one way or another way, they have to read it. The fact file. So.
Okay, so what does it say in the instructions? All right, and so it says either check the information you wrote or find the answers to your questions. Read the fact file about Orlando Bloom.
Right? Okay, they will read it and then answer the question.
Then they tick off the questions that they formulated. So in number 1, make a list of 5 things you know about Orlando Bloom, right? Mm-hmm. So he was in Lord of the Rings. He's British, right?
Yeah.
So you write those ideas on the whiteboard, right? Okay, and then you get them to, okay, now here's the fact file. Read the fact file quickly. This is like the gist.
Okay.
Do they mention these things in the fact file? Okay, let's have a look. Hobbies, pets. Well, it was born in Britain, England. Yeah, so that was correct. Inglaterra, right? Nacido in Inglaterra. So that was correct. So we tick that one off from our list.
But which list is the?
Well, the first thing you do at the beginning of the lesson is maybe have a picture of Orlando Bloom or Diego Luna, right, on your whiteboard like this. And then you elicit from the students, what do you know about Diego Luna? Where was he born, right? He was born in, I don't know, Mexico City. Okay, so this is what we think is
Ah,
we
okay.
know about Diego Luna, right? What was his? When was he born? Like 1980, right? So then you say, okay, now read the fact file about Diego Luna, and then you tick off. Were you right about these things?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And
Okay.
it's tick. Yeah. Born in 1980, wrong. Born in 1985. Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Huh?
Thank you.
So that's how
Yeah.
you check the text.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah. Okay, clear.
Yeah. Sometimes you gotta like read the materials and follow what the materials writer wants you to do with the materials, right? And then you can adapt your own ideas from that.
Yeah.
But these are
Thank you,
experts. These
teacher.
are experts. They know how to write good teaching materials. Yeah. Whereas we're only beginners. So make the use of what we have.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I think that's just about it for tonight. We can finish a bit earlier, I think, because it's the holidays. If you have any final questions. But I think you're going to be well prepared for next week. Okay, I'll make this video available on the Neo platform so that you can go back and review it.
Yeah. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a
Pues
good night.
descansen and enjoy your Semana Santa.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Go to the beach or whatever it is you're going to do.
See you guys.
Buenas noches, que
Bye.
descansen.
Gracias.
Bye.
Thanks.
Igualmente, bye.
Bye.